morning, y'all, and welcome back to my channel. Thank y'all so much for tapping back in to see what I have to say. I promise y'all, it truly does mean the world to me. But with that being said, what are we talking about? We're talking about QUANT Network, of course, you guys. Yes. Now listen, I know the market is down, you guys, but the market is down all the way across the board. You know, you have Bitcoin at 84 something thousand dollars. You have like hedera at like 15 or 16 cents. You know, you have Chronos at 9 cents. You know, you have Quant at bouncing in between 65 and 70 something dollars. Yes, I know the market is down, you guys, but you have to remember and think about it from this lens. Have the fundamentals of the project changed? No. So the market is down because we are tied to something that is not tangible, something that is driven off of hype and speculation, something that can be shaken by things like tariffs. Bitcoin. But understand that one day that is going to change because utility, these true utility projects, they're going to shine. They're going to have their time. They're going to have that platform to show the world that, you know, there's something more than just hype and speculation to Web3. There's something more than just, you know, the driven, you know, whams of somebody doing a tweet on something foolish, that you have real companies that are facilitating solutions to real everyday problems in things like the banking sector. Today we're talking about something called the RSN. Now I know we've talked about the RLN, but we're going to talk about the RSN inside this video so you can understand that this is a vision of shared ledgers all over the world tapping into one central singular network, which is Overledger. Understand QUANT Networks, software as a service, what it does, that is now tied to global standards and internet protocols. Follow me on this, okay? The RSN, the RLN, which was the regulated liability network. They have one in the UK. There's one here in America. Amazon actually has an RLN as well. Any major huge conglomerate or country or central bank could have something like an RLN, which they're able to tap into, so they could do cross-border seamless payments, or within the same jurisdiction, but just seamless payments with themselves and others around the world. Okay, so the RLN, you know, we talked about it till we was blue in the face. We know there was big old players like BNY Mellon and Citi and HSBC and all these major, the Bank of, all these major players, right? Okay. But now we're getting ready to type into the RSN. It's a lot of players, so I'm gonna pick up a piece of paper so we can get it right, okay? Because a lot of them, y'all. So the players that are associated with the RSN, which is being built out here in America, is as follows. You have Citi. You have US Bank, you have JP Morgan, you have MasterCard, Swift, TD Bank, USDF. That is a company that I believe is going to issue the American stablecoin. People, that's the USDF, for whatever the reason, is off people's radar, but that is a stablecoin issuer. Follow me on this. Also, we have Visa, Wells Fargo, Zane Bancorp. You have the New York Innovation Center, which I believe is the Fed. You then have BNY Mellon. You have something like the DCC and many more. And remember, the DCC settles something like $3 or $4 quadrillion a year. Understand, we're talking major players that are tied to this thing called the RSN, that is built off of something called the RLN, and so that they can do these cross-border payments and settlements seamlessly. That's what this is all about, you guys. It is all about solutions to problems, and to understand that if you're holding a piece of the solution, you have no choice but to profit off of their problem. Follow me on this, okay, you guys? But this first video is going to be representatives from Citi talking about the RLN, talking about how they have had different things go on with the RLN, and what were some of the challenges to the RSN. Things like we have delivery, but we don't have the instant settlement. and then understand what the RSN is going to come in and do shortly. But follow me on this. I'm always going somewhere, and all roads lead to QUANT Network, okay? So here we go, that first video from representatives from Citi on the banker.
Up until this point, RLN has been primarily focused on like the payment aspect of it. But with the future of delivery versus payment, DVP, and having multiple asset classes on it, so the aspiration is much more, albeit we've up to this point have been primarily focused on payments.
And Yuval, what do you think are the next steps for the RLN?
I think that especially in developed countries, the payment system is such a core piece of infrastructure. And therefore, it is extremely important. I was in Congress last week testifying about this space. And one of the things that you could clearly see is there's still questions. There's still not necessarily the confidence level that you would want in order to move that forward. So I think that what Citi has done very well with their counterparts is saying to all players, including regulators, let's go on this journey to make sure that that confidence is at the right place. So I think the next phase of RLN is to take all of these elements that Ryan discussed in terms of risk, technology, scalability, all of these elements, and just keep on building. But I think the next phase is also going to kind of start looking into beyond just payments. What does this new evolution creates in terms of opportunity of reducing risk? We keep on talking about DVP. There is no DVP in today's world. We are very close to DVP, but there is still settlement risk. I think once you start having things like RLN in a true digital form, you could have true DVP to settle securities, bonds, and any other asset class against cash, and that will remove a significant amount of risk out of the system.
Now you just saw, and I know they said a mouthful in that. It was a lot being said in regards to something called delivery versus payment, okay? Understand that this is what the RSN does. It gives the technology layer the settlement that it needs for it to be finality within that 3 seconds where they want it anywhere around the world as far as these cross-border payments are concerned, or with multinational corporations, central banks, commercial banks, and government entities like treasuries. Understand what I'm telling you when I'm telling you the things that I am telling you, okay, you guys? But in this next video, there was a closed door meeting with the participants, all the people that I named earlier, Citi and all these other people. There was a closed door meeting with them. And it was a webinar. So there is going to be a video from that webinar. I'm going to actually have a couple different clips of that video in this so you can really understand what the RSN is and what they are developing with distributed ledger technologies right up under our noses. And if you are coupling yourselves with things that are regulated entities that are working alongside of regulators, building out the future of finance, you have no choice but to be happy in the future. But here we go. That next video, the closed door meeting about the RSN coming from our boy Maximus Crypto.
So what is the proof of concept? Well, the RSN proof of concept builds on the great work that's already been done, as Artem mentioned. And it starts to assess the viability of a permissioned and regulated shared ledger, holding both securities and liabilities for 3 separate settlement use cases. So I'll just outline these here. They are 3 domestic settlement use cases, beginning with 1, our base use case of RSN as a FMI, or financial market infrastructure for security settlement. And then we build on this to explore 2, a security-led delivery versus payment settlement, followed by 3, a tokenized payment versus payment. So the intention is to bring to life and explore the opportunity for regulated shared multi-asset ledger. And at the end of the POC, this group will publish a business, technical, and legal report for each use case. Just one more note on the scope, as it's outlined on the slide. So the RSN initiative remains grounded in the regulated space and seeks to evaluate the potential for technology to enhance settlement of several regulated instruments. We're not evaluating opportunities in the unregulated space or leveraging public and/or permissionless infrastructures. In terms of participants, this endeavor is only possible because of the commitment and participation from industry-leading public and private organizations. So we're fortunate to have a diverse range of project contributors with SME experience across this POC and the continued involvement of NY Innovation Center as a technical observer. So with that, I'll hand over to John from JP Morgan to share more detail on the use cases, specifically the first one.
Thank you, Amanda. John Schwartz, JP Morgan, and I'll be walking folks through the base use case. So as Artem mentioned, we are leveraging work done previously during the PVB pilot for RLN Phase 1, complementing that use case by incorporating a securities leg into the workflow. Goal here is to achieve near real-time DVP settlement within the FMI. By having both tokenized public and private forms of money and tokenized US regulated securities in the network, it should enhance the market's ability to settle securities transactions with a greater degree of precision, reducing settlement risk, enhancing available liquidity, and reducing operational inefficiencies faced by financial institutions today. Residing within the FMI are participant partitioned ledgers, warehousing tokenized central bank money, tokenized bank deposits, and in this base use case, tokenized central bank treasuries, the latter originating within the Fed securities partition, which you can think of as a tokenized version of FedWire. There are a number of potential benefits in realizing this type of US Treasury settlement flow. The first benefit is, as I mentioned, near real-time settlement. In this base use case, we are assuming an underlying US Treasury transaction could be an outright cash buy, sell of a bond, trade channels outside of the RSN FMI. Once executed, details in the transaction are submitted through the RSN FMI within each of the executing bank partitions, concluding with a DVP settlement of tokenized treasuries versus tokenized deposits. As I mentioned, one of the first and primary benefits is near real-time settlement of a DVP transaction. Delivery versus payment in this context is generally detached from the execution of the underlying transaction in real-world flow. The delay creates intraday liquidity issues. Additionally, the uncertainty around settlement timing shortens the time frame in which settlement discrepancies are identified and resolved, an issue inherent in the use of today's existing settlement architectures. By leveraging an FMI capable of settling DVP transactions, you can validate cash and securities positions near real time, smoothing out the market's ability to settle large amounts of transactions in shortened timeframes. Another benefit is the potential for expanded liquidity access. Reducing uncertainty, even in settlement flows, ultimately promotes liquidity. In terms of the price, cost of that liquidity, the provisioning by market participants of it, as well as when that liquidity is available to the market.
So you just heard from multiple people from that closed door RSN meeting, things like Citi and JP Morgan. Follow me on this, okay, you guys, because I'm always going somewhere. So there was a question and answer part, kind of sort of the ending part of that RSN. And I want you guys to truly tap in and listen to what he is saying, especially when he comes to the part about the challenges and the incorporation and having to have something that is truly interoperable, an interoperable system, and that it won't just be one system, but it will be a network of networks, a systems of systems tying into an interoperable solution. We know what the interoperable solution is, you guys. Think about it. Things that are tied to governments, central banks, standards, and internet protocols, okay? Follow me, okay? QUANT Network. But here we go, that question and answer from that RSN closed door meeting.
How will the findings of this POC contribute to the body of knowledge of the industry broadly and our understanding of next generation settlement models?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Charles, and thank you for asking that question. I want to be careful not to rehash all of the points that were made earlier, but I'll just frame a couple things, right? We're structuring the POC around three primary pillars, or we are evaluating the POC and the findings across three lenses: the business lens, the technology lens, and the legal lens. And you've just heard Rob touch on that briefly. From the business perspective, obviously, we need to assess the broader benefits and efficiencies that can come from this next-gen settlement network that incorporates both cash and securities. So there's obviously the operational efficiencies and the efficiencies of synchronized messaging and communication, as opposed to just relying on batch systems and batch processes. The other dimension is the notion of introducing real-time settlement capabilities into the shared network and the ability to operate across, having an always-on system, a 24/7 system. Obviously, this is not implying that this will only be a real-time settlement system, but the notion of that capability being available and present opens up very interesting opportunities and challenges and considerations that the group will be working through. Right. So the obvious ones just to flag are, well, if you have the ability to move cash and securities on a 24/7 basis as bilaterally agreed by two counterparties, what opportunities does that provide? Does that open up entirely new opportunities for intraday markets or more efficient collateral mobility, right? All of these are questions that will be considered and will be contributed to the broader industry for consideration. From a technology perspective, there's two lenses, obviously. One is the general efficiency of whether distributed ledger technology or shared ledger technology can be a more efficient communication and coordination protocol for regulated institutions to agree and execute transactions. The other dimension, of course, is the interoperability piece, which we talked about. The fact that there will not be likely a single ledger to rule them all, and there will still need to be a model that allows us to interoperate across networks, across ledgers efficiently, and doing so in a way that doesn't just recreate the existing silos that we have today in the industry that are just tied with messaging and an abundance of reconciliation processes as mitigants. Right, that's some of the aspects from a technology perspective. From a legal perspective, the big question is, can we enable and deploy this model that's being outlined here in a legally compliant manner under current regulations? That's obviously one dimension. The second one is which was touched upon here is around the settlement finality piece. Can this be done with legal comfort and certainty, the fact that the settlement finality will be recorded and occurring within the RSN network? And then ultimately, maybe the biggest one is, again, this is not a side project by just one institution or a small set of institutions. This is really about co-developing and co-ideating this model and thinking through these considerations, including both the public and private sector. So one big piece is the consensus that will be formed within this group should be pretty impactful and powerful in terms of informing the broader conversation within the industry.
Now you just heard him out of his mouth talking about how important interoperability is and understand what QUANT Network is facilitating and what they're doing. Why they've already been a named participant of the RLN in UK. They've already been a named participant from the Digital Pound Foundation and Innovate Finance. They've already been a named participant from things like the Australian government. They've already been named participants in so many things with things like the Bank of Canada, Amazon, Barclays, MasterCard, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Understand what is truly being laid out in front of us. And to know that the regulatory regime here in America has completely changed. Not is changing, has completely changed. And it's okay, Anubis. It's okay. He hears my neighbor's dog barking, so he barks anytime they bark. It's okay, baby. So the regulatory regime in America has changed, right? So they're at a point where it is now not time to play. It is go live. It is truly go live here in America. There is no more, this is nothing but money launderers and criminals. No, we're at a point of, it's a technology. We need to utilize this technology, and be the number one utilizer of this technology in the world to ensure that we are and stay America, the reserve currency of the world. And when you have things like a Treasury secretary sitting next to a president and saying those words exactly about distributed ledger technologies and talking about them having to get with the comptroller of currency and understand what the comptroller of currency just said about the distributed ledger technology sector, and you know exactly where we're going globally. Okay, because America has a global stage. When America does something, it has global eyes all over it. And now that America is embracing the distributed ledger technology sector, so will the world. Here we go. Our president and the Treasury Secretary talking about things like the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, talking about things like stable coins, talking about things like the deployment of this technology across the country in multiple different sectors. Follow what I'm telling you when I'm telling you about this sector and what it is going to be globally when it's all said and done. Here we go, the next video.
The Treasury and Commerce Departments will also explore new pathways to accumulate additional Bitcoin holdings for the reserve, provided it's done at no cost to the taxpayers. We don't want any cost to the taxpayers. In addition, my order directs federal agencies to conduct an inventory of all crypto assets currently held by the U.S. government and determine how they can be transferred easily to the Treasury. Non-Bitcoin digital assets will be held in a new U.S. digital asset stockpile where they will be managed properly. My administration also is working to end the federal bureaucracy's war on crypto. I also want to express my strong support for the efforts of lawmakers in Congress as they work on bills to provide regulatory certainty for dollar-backed stablecoins and the digital assets market. They're working very hard on that. This is a tremendous opportunity for economic growth and innovation in our financial sector, and will really go a long way. I think it's going to be a tremendous, we feel like pioneers in a way, of tremendous method of growth. And things are very much tied, and we want to keep it that way, the U.S. dollar. Long into the future, we're going to keep it that way. I hope lawmakers will send that legislation to my desk before August recess if they can. And they're very much working with you, and you know a lot of them, and a lot of them were committed right from the very beginning. So I just want to congratulate you all for being at the White House today.
When President Trump has signed the executive order to establish the strategic Bitcoin reserve and stockpile, we're going to position the United States as a leader among nations in the digital asset strategy. It's important for the United States to recognize this fact and get ahead of the other nations in the digital age. We applaud the President's direction to use the digital assets already in possession of the nation, and we are going to establish this Bitcoin reserve. We will use this authority to augment the asset side of the United States balance sheet. As I've said many times, President Trump is creating assets for the American people, while most past presidents have created debt, and a large part of this asset program can be in digital assets. We are going to end the regulatory weaponization against digital assets. The Biden administration's actions did nothing other than punish innovators, and that all of you have made it here today is really a testament to your fortitude. Much of Treasury's responsibility in this order relates to the tax code and determinations around risk weightings, and I'm here to assure you that we are going to work with the Controller of the Currency, the IRS, and we're going to rescind and amend all applicable previous guidance. And we are going to put a lot of thought into the stablecoin regime, and as President Trump has directed, we are going to keep the U.S. the dominant reserve currency in the world, and we will use stablecoins to do that.
Now, you just saw, whether you like them, you hate them, whatever the case may be, that was Donald Trump and our Treasury Secretary talking about the distributed ledger technology sector. These are things that was right from the White House crypto roundtable that they had a few weeks ago. But understand that this is something that is now truly being ingrained into the fabric of America. And it's because you now have the House and the Senate codifying and working on law so that it can be pushed to the president's desk. Understand that a law is way more powerful and has way more staying power than any executive order ever will. So yes, executive orders have been signed. That is amazing. But we now have both of our bodies here in America, the House and the Senate, actively working on stablecoin regulation and actively working on a market structure bill. These are things that will become literally infrastructure, because everything else will be built on top of the infrastructure that is being laid by the powers that be that controls markets and laws in this country. Understand what is truly being laid out right in front of us, and being on the backs of these ISOs, these extremely compliant, regulatory compliant technologies that are now, and that now have front row seats at a table with the highest ranking politician in the country. Understand what is truly being laid out right in front of our faces, you guys. And understand that if all of those entities at that table win, it only is a win for Quant, because Quant is ISO TC 307 interoperability solution, which is the network of networks, aka the Finternet, aka the shared ledger. Understand what is truly being laid out in front of us. And if you made it all the way through this whole rant, I want you to type in RSN, which stands for the Regulated Settlement Network. And that way I know y'all made it all the way through this entire video. And to the next one, me and Anubis, y'all already know. Peace out.